I found out that my mom had been secretly married to my real father for 20 years. I was never the type to believe that life could turn upside down in a matter of seconds. If you like stories like this, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue. It all started in the most ordinary way. I was helping my mom sort through some boxes in her basement. She had decided to do a big clean out since she was moving to a smaller apartment after her second divorce. At first, I thought it was just a pile of random documents, birth certificates, medical records, old bills. But then, one detail made me freeze. It was a marriage certificate. My mom's name was there. But what sent a chill down my spine was the name next to hers. It wasn't the man I grew up calling Dad. My heart started pounding so hard I could almost hear it. I checked the date. They had been married for over 20 years. My mom had never mentioned being married to someone else before my dad. I wasn't exactly thrilled about spending my Saturday digging through old junk, but I knew she needed help, so I swallowed my laziness and went. The musty smell of mold and dust filled the air as we worked in silence. Each of us focused on opening boxes and sorting what to keep and what to throw away. That's when I found a worn-out black folder hidden at the bottom of a box full of old papers. I opened it without thinking much. That alone was strange. But something even more shocking hit me like a punch to the gut. The name on that document was the same as my biological father's. The man who, according to my mom, had abandoned her when I was just a baby. The man I had spent my whole life believing was a deadbeat who never wanted to meet me. The room seemed to spin around me. My hands were clammy as I stared at that yellowed piece of paper. My mom, noticing my sudden silence, looked at me and saw what I was holding. The shock in her eyes told me everything before she even opened her mouth. "What is this?" My voice came out shakier than I would have liked. She opened and closed her mouth a few times, unable to say anything. Then, in a whisper, she murmured something that made my stomach drop. "I can explain." The way my mom was looking at me made my stomach twist. I had seen her nervous before, in arguments, tough moments, but never like this. She was terrified. "You can explain?" I repeated, my voice now steadier despite the tight knot in my throat. "What do you mean, Mom? You were married to my biological father this whole time?" She shut her eyes for a moment, like she was trying to come up with a coherent answer. I felt a wave of anger rise inside me. It was obvious she never expected me to find this. I was going to tell you one day." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "When? On your deathbed?" I snapped, feeling my breath quicken. "You lied to me my whole life. You made me believe my father left us, that he abandoned us, when in reality, you were married? This whole time?" She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "It's not that simple." "Oh, it's not? Then explain it to me. Because honestly, I'm starting to think I don't even know who you are." My mom sat down on an old chair, holding her head in her hands. The silence between us was suffocating. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or cry. Then, after a few seconds that felt like an eternity, she started talking. "Your father. Your real father. We never actually separated. At least, not legally." She looked at me, hesitant. "But we had to keep it a secret." "A secret from who? My other dad? The whole world?" She nodded slowly. "There were reasons I couldn't tell you before." My heart was pounding. "Well, now you can. I want the truth, Mom. The whole truth." She ran her hands over her face, clearly exhausted, then looked at me with an expression that seemed scared. "Your father didn't abandon you." Her voice was so soft I could barely hear it. "He was taken away from us." My mind raced. Taken away? What did that even mean? "What do you mean by that?" She hesitated again, and her silence only fueled my fury. "Is he alive?" I asked, a strange flicker of hope in my voice. My mom blinked a few times, her eyes welling up with tears. "Yes." It felt like the ground had vanished beneath me. "You're joking." My voice shook. "You made me believe he was dead." She shook her head. "I never said he was dead. You just never asked." I never asked because you made me believe he was a monster who abandoned us. You filled in the blanks with your lies. I felt sick. My head was spinning, and the mere thought that he was alive and had been kept away from me filled me with rage. "Where is he?" I asked, more firmly this time. My mother looked away. "I don't know." "Of course you do." My eyes burned with anger. "You were married to him this whole time. How can you not know?" She took a deep breath, as if battling something inside her. "Your father..." Her voice faltered. "He disappeared." The air around me felt heavy. "Disappeared? What do you mean, disappeared?" "He was involved in complicated things that could have put us in danger." I felt my patience slipping away. "What kind of things, Mom?" She bit her lip and looked away again. Then, she murmured something that knocked the air out of my lungs. "He knew something he wasn't supposed to." The silence that followed was deafening. "You need to stop speaking in riddles and tell me the truth. Now." My mother swallowed hard. "If I tell you, you might be in danger too." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just some family secret. I had no idea what my mother and biological father had been involved in, but one thing was clear. There was much more to this story than I had imagined. My mother looked at me as if she had just made a terrible mistake by saying too much. The panic in her eyes told me this wasn't just about a hidden marriage or an absent father. "Mom, what are you talking about?" My voice came out lower than I intended. She glanced at the basement door, as if afraid someone might be listening. Then she closed her eyes for a moment and murmured, "I shouldn't have let you find those documents." Too late. I pulled up the nearest chair and sat in front of her. My heart was pounding, but I tried to stay calm. "You have to tell me everything. Now." She took a deep breath and then began. "Your father, your real father, worked with something dangerous." She intertwined her fingers, as if searching for the right words. "He dealt with information that certain people didn't want getting out." "What kind of information?" She looked me straight in the eye. "Things involving the government." A chill ran down my spine. "What?" "He found out something he shouldn't have, and when he realized he was being watched, he tried to get out of it, but it was already too late." She ran a hand over her face. "He came to me and said we needed to disappear, together. He believed they were after him." My mind was spinning. It was hard to accept that everything I knew about my life was a well-crafted lie. "And you two were married this whole time?" She nodded slowly. "On paper, yes. But in reality, we had to pretend we weren't. It was the only way to keep you safe." "Then why did you make me believe he abandoned us?" She lowered her head. "Because if I told you the truth, you might have wanted to look for him. And that could have been dangerous." "And you think I won't look for him now?" My voice came out sharp. "You just gave me the exact reason I needed to go after him." Her eyes filled with panic. "No, that's exactly what they want." I frowned. "Who are they?" My mother just shook her head. "Powerful people. People who can make you disappear without a trace." My blood ran cold. "Is that what happened to him?" She hesitated. "I don't know." Her voice was barely a whisper. "He disappeared 5 years ago, without a trace. 5 years. I had spent my whole life thinking he never wanted anything to do with me, but he had been missing." A lump formed in my throat. "I need to find him." "No!" My mother grabbed my arm. "You need to promise me you'll let this go. I'm serious. This could put you in danger." But how could I forget something like this? How could I just move on, knowing that my father might be alive somewhere, or worse, dead because of what he knew? I stood up, my head pounding. "I can't promise that." My mother stayed silent. Her expression was pure desperation. "Fine," she finally said. "If you really want answers, there's someone who might be able to help." My eyes widened. Who? She hesitated for a moment, then stood up and walked over to a locked drawer in the basement. She pulled out a set of keys, unlocked the drawer, and took out an old yellow envelope. Her hands trembled as she handed it to me. This man is your only chance of finding out the truth, but please, be careful. I took the envelope and opened it. Inside, there was a folded piece of paper with a name and a phone number written by hand. The name was David Carter. Who is he? My mother sighed. A former colleague of your father's, someone who might know where he is, or what happened to him. A shiver ran down my spine. Do you trust him? She hesitated for a moment. I trust that he knows more than I do. The weight of that sentence wasn't lost on me. And what if he's dangerous? My mother pressed her lips together. Then you're already in danger. I gripped the piece of paper tightly. I didn't know if I was about to get myself into something far bigger than I could imagine, but it was too late to turn back now. That same night, I sat in my room, phone in hand, staring at the number. My mind was a mess. What if my mother was right? What if I was stepping into something dangerous? But I had to know. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. Who is this? The voice was deep and direct. I swallowed hard. My name is Emma. I'm the daughter of... Before I could finish, the line went dead. I froze, heart pounding, staring at the screen as if it might explode at any moment. David Carter knew who I was, and he hung up the second he heard my name. What did that mean? And more importantly, what had my father discovered that made a man hang up on me the moment he heard my name? My heartbeat was so loud I could feel it in my throat. I stared at the phone for a few seconds, trying to process what had just happened. David Carter knew who I was, and he hung up as soon as he heard my name. I could think of 2 explanations for that, and neither of them was comforting. Either he was involved in my father's disappearance and didn't want me digging any deeper, or he was afraid to talk to me. Either way, I wasn't stopping now. Without thinking too much, I dialed the number again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. I threw the phone onto my bed and got up, pacing back and forth in my room. My hands were clammy. I knew I had to find this man. So I decided that if he didn't want to talk to me, I would find him myself. I grabbed the envelope my mother had given me and examined it closely. No address, just a name and a number. But I wasn't out of options. I opened my laptop and started searching. It took me less than 15 minutes to find something. David Carter, 56 years old, former government data analyst, lived in a small town a few hours away. I didn't think twice. I grabbed my bag, threw on my coat, and headed to the living room. My mother was sitting on the couch, drinking tea, her gaze lost in thought. When she saw me dressed like that, she frowned. Where are you going? I'm going to find David Carter. Her eyes widened. Emma, no! I need answers. She set the cup down and stood up. You don't understand. That man, he might be under surveillance, or worse. If he's being watched, that means he knows something important. My mother pressed her lips together as if trying to find a way to stop me, but deep down, she knew I wouldn't back down. With a sigh, she simply said, "Be careful." I nodded. And then, I left. The road was dark and almost deserted. As I drove, my mind struggled to piece together a puzzle without all the pieces. What had my father discovered? If David Carter was involved, why did my mother trust him enough to give me his contact? And most importantly, where the hell was my father? I arrived late at night. The house was a simple cabin in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and an eerie silence. I parked a little ways away and walked up to the door, feeling the cold wind bite my face. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I rang it again. Silence. My stomach twisted. I knocked harder. David Carter? My name is Emma. I just want to talk. For a moment, I thought no one would answer. But then I heard a noise on the other side of the door. It cracked open just a sliver, revealing a tired-looking man with an unshaven face and wary eyes. He looked at me and whispered, "You shouldn't be here." My body tensed. "I need to know the truth about my father." He glanced around as if expecting someone to be watching us. "Were you followed?" My heart sped up. I don't know." David Carter ran a hand over his face and muttered something under his breath. Then, he pulled me inside and locked every bolt behind me. The room was cramped, filled with scattered papers and computer monitors displaying codes and satellite images. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, kid." He turned to me. I swallowed hard. "Then tell me." He studied me for a moment, then sighed, sinking into an old chair. "Your father. He found out something that could change everything." My breath caught in my throat. "What?" David Carter looked me straight in the eye and said something that sent a chill down my spine. "Your father discovered that we're all being watched. All of us. All the time." My head spun. "What?" He gestured toward the computers. "Your father was one of the lead analysts on a classified project, a program that used artificial intelligence to predict human actions. Not just track them, but anticipate their every move." I tried to process that. "Are you saying the government can predict what people are going to do?" "Not just the government. Private corporations. Groups that aren't even supposed to exist. They had access to everything. And your father found something he wasn't supposed to." My blood ran cold. "What did he find?" David Carter leaned forward. "He found his own name on the list of people who were supposed to disappear." The air left my lungs. "What?" "Your father was marked. He knew too much. And they tried to silence him. But he disappeared 5 years ago. Could he still be alive?" David Carter hesitated. "I don't know. But if he is, he's hiding. And with good reason." I sat down, my whole body trembling. "So that's why my mom kept this a secret? To protect me?" He nodded. "And now that you're involved, they're going to track you too." My stomach dropped. "How do I find him?" David Carter was silent for a moment. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a flash drive. "Your father left this with me in case something happened to him, but I never had the courage to open it." I took the flash drive with shaking hands. "What's on it?" "I don't know. But if there's anything that can lead you to him, it's in there." My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. "Thank you, David." He nodded, but his face remained tense. "Emma, be careful. Now that you've started digging, they'll notice." I nodded, shoving the flash drive into my pocket and taking a deep breath. I had no idea what I was about to find, but one thing was certain. I wasn't stopping until I found my father. I left David Carter's house with the flash drive tucked safely in my pocket and my mind racing with everything I had just learned. My father wasn't just some ordinary man. He was involved in something big, something that made powerful people want to silence him. And now, I was in their crosshairs too. I drove back home as fast as I could, checking my rearview mirror every minute, my pulse spiking whenever a car followed me for too long. I needed to access that flash drive, but I also knew I couldn't do it on my personal laptop. If there really was a system monitoring everything and everyone, I couldn't risk being traced. I pulled into a 24-hour cafe along the way, a small, dimly lit place with only a handful of people typing away on their laptops. I bought a coffee just to have an excuse to be there and sat in the back, opening one of the public computers. With sweaty hands, I plugged in the flash drive. It contained only one file, a video. I clicked on it. The footage was grainy. It took me a few seconds to recognize the face on the screen. My father. My chest tightened. He looked different from the old pictures my mother still kept. Thinner, exhausted, deep shadows under his eyes. He looked directly into the camera, took a deep breath, and started speaking. "If you're watching this, it means something went wrong. It means they found me." I swallowed hard. "My name is Jonathan Parker, and if you're seeing this video, it means my daughter, Emma, has finally learned the truth." My heart nearly stopped. He made this video for me. Emma, I'm sorry I'm not there. I'm sorry for everything your mother had to hide from you. But it was the only way to keep you safe. I discovered things I was never supposed to find. And now, I have no choice but to disappear. He paused, breathing deeply. You must be wondering what I found. I'll tell you. But understand this. The more you know, the more danger you're in. A shiver ran down my spine. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. There's a system, a program designed to monitor and predict every person's movements. Not just through what we do online, but through what we say near our devices, what we buy, where we go. It analyzes patterns and decides who could become a threat. He swallowed hard. And I was on the list. My head was spinning. They didn't need evidence. They didn't need a reason. They only needed the probability that someone might become a problem. He sighed. They came after me, but I ran. And now I'm hiding. I can't tell you where I am, but if you found this video, it means it's time. He paused. Emma, if you want to find me, you need to follow the clues. Hidden in this flash drive, there's an encrypted file. It will lead you to the next piece of the puzzle. He hesitated. But please, be careful. They're probably already after you. The screen went black. The video was over. I sat there motionless, my coffee growing cold in front of me, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. My father was alive, and he wanted me to find him. I followed the instructions from the video and found the hidden file inside the flash drive. It contained a string of numbers and coordinates. I didn't know what they meant, but I knew one thing. I wasn't stopping until I found my father. And if they really were watching me, then let them come. I was ready. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like to support our work. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more gripping stories like this. And of course, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think.